What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? There was rule they put in place my freshman year of high school, that if you arrived late, that is, after first bell, you couldn't park in the parking lot. You'd have to park at the gas station down the highway and walk to school, making you even more late. It stopped after 20 or so people intentionally showed up late to school and made a mass exodus along the highway, on top of a lot of parents itching. My high school put in a policy so that after the third time you were late, you got detention. They didn't change the absent policy. Tardiness decreased by 52%. Absentees increased 83%. Edit. The punishment for missing was nothing until social services comes in. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our R was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. If you violated the dress code policy, you had to wear these really big grey sweatpants or sweatshirts that said DCV in big orange letters. Dress code violation. It became a thing to get caught because they were apparently really comfortable. When the admin finally caught on that people were trying to get them on purpose, they changed it so that you got in school suspension. Jokes on them for that too. Lots of kids preferred that over being in class. Well, it wasn't a school-wide policy, but I had a super itchy French teacher who would constantly hand out detentions for things as inconsequential as walking to the trash can to throw away a piece of paper. She absolutely could not deal with the fact that we periodically might need to actually leave our chairs for a perfectly valid reason. One day she locked herself out of the classroom and nobody would let her back in. Sorry, we aren't allowed to get out of our seats. She had to get the janitor. Lol. My high school was trying to prevent a senior prank since the class before us had got a little out of hand. They basically told us not to have one, that they would get anyone who did anything in a lot of trouble. Yada yada. So somebody has an idea. What if we do an anti-prank? The idea had floated around the halls and everyone knew what we were going to do. For an entire week, every senior was going to bring a potentially threatening item for a senior prank and do nothing with it. The week starts and that Monday, nearly the entire senior class carries a banana with them to every class. This is a school of 2,600 student, 650 graduating class, so there are hundreds of bananas being carried through the halls. Teachers and assistant principals freaking out. By noon, an announcement was made that all bananas needed to be eaten or thrown away or they would be confiscated. So by that afternoon, every banana was taken away from the student. The next day got even better. Somebody has the idea that we should all bring a gallon jug of water with us to class. And to no one's surprise, again there is an announcement that they are going to start taking up the water jugs for fear of what we are going to do with them. But this time, the students got creative. People are resentful now and not wanting to give up their precious water. Students are getting creative, hiding them in backpacks, avoiding teachers in the hallways, whatever it took to keep their water jugs. But alas, most of the jugs had been confiscated, so the students start taking to social media. Tons of tweets and mentions are going out to local news stations. TMZ, Oprah, Ellen, you name it, they got mentioned. All of these messages are going out along the lines of school is confiscating all water, not allowing students to drink water. High school draw 2kxx where a send help. You get the picture. Before the end of the day, 2 different news reporters were at our school. Guess we had the last laugh after all. TLDR. School made silly rules to not let us have a senior prank. We anti-pranked them and their rules backfired. Lots of negative press over nothing malicious ever happening. I went to a private school for elementary, where uniforms were strict. If you didn't wear a belt you'd go to the principal's office and he would make you use a shoestring. Well, when he opened the drawer there was like 6 different colors and everybody thought it was really neat, so for a short period of time there was a bunch of kids coming to school with no belt so they could wear their lime green shoestring belt. My school banned all balls over a couple of inches in diameter because someone kicked a football through a window during lunch. Most of us that walked home walked past the woods by the golf course and had a ready supply of golf balls as a result. Golf balls were allowed under the new rules due to their size. 3 broken windows in 1 lunch period later they weren't. Don't do anything unless directed by your boss. Any deviation from this will result in write-up termination. This was a very literal directive from upper management that took place after an office incident. Our work is very fluid, and our team alone contained 20 people. Needless to say, productivity hit unfounded lows. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests they completed. We figured out to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We'd set up separate feature tickets for create button, make button blue, make button respond when clicked, implement business logic, display results in grid, allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a 1-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive, despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. When I was in kindergarten, during the morning announcements one day they came on and said, "And please no throwing snowballs. There is a chance you might accidentally get some rocks in them." You could see on the faces of all 20-some students the realization that OMG we could put rocks in them. New manager got rid of the sofa in the break room so people couldn't nap on their hour-long lunch break. No one overslept or took the piss, but it was good to have the option on a tough day. Stoner guy started sleeping in other places, including in between walls and in the warehouse. That's when we started losing him and couldn't find him, as he'd go into a deeper sleep and was less likely to be disturbed. He didn't lose his job somehow. That place had a hard time hiring. Edit. To clarify where stoner guy would go, we'd find him in between walls and shelves. It was a DIY store that had been something else years before, so there were random partition walls and oddly laid out shelving units everywhere. A real id show of a store layout. He had quite a few places to hide in and nap. They made a new rule where we had to ask permission to use the restroom during lunch. We all coordinated and the whole cafeteria would raise their hands at once to request to go. They responded by sending us 2 at a time. We did this for a few days, then changed our procedure to everyone just getting up at once and going to the restroom without permission. They didn't ever officially do away with the rule, but the teachers on duty in the lunchroom eventually just stopped enforcing it. Edit. It's interesting how many people responded something like "my school had the same rule," and how many people said something like "WTF. That's the craziest rule I've heard of. Is this even real?" A school in my area jacked up the cost of the parking pass. People protested by not buying the pass. Instead they rode the bus. Funny thing is, the county really relies on juniors and seniors driving because they don't have enough buses for all the students. The parking pass fee dropped. People drove again. Don't ever let them tell you driving to school is a privilege. They need you to drive to school. They started a no gum rule that made a lot of junior high kids start a black market for gum. My senior year of high school, some guy in my class got an in-school suspension for wearing a headband. He had long, curly hair, so the next couple weeks almost every guy on the football team started wearing headbands in protest. Keep in mind that girls could wear headbands, just not guys. No one really understood this rule. Edit. This took place right in the middle of football season. Our school made it so you couldn't play dodgeball anymore. So what happened was that the gym teachers came up with this new game called Fireball. The rules are there are balls in the middle of the gym people go on 2 separate teams go for, and if you get hit you're out. If you catch a ball you okay, so it was basically dodgeball. Then fireball was banned. So now there's this new game called pinball, which isn't involving the machines unfortunately, but it's basically dodgeball fireball, but there's bowling pins that need to be knocked over as well. I think they just gave up after a while. Zero tolerance, which means if you are involved with fighting, you will be kicked out. No questions asked. They think it would means no more fighting. Nope. It means if the bully is beating up a kid, no one would step in. For fear of involving with the fight and getting kicked out, no one would snitch because it means the bully will target you next. And now you are involved in fighting and get kicked out. It is a RedditJar policy. No running during recess. It was made because some kid in the 2nd grade ran and tripped. So for whatever reason, they restricted running for all grades K-5th. Everyone should know that when you ask a 5-10-year-old to not do something, that's the next thing they're going to do. They started running in the halls, the cafeteria, the classrooms, and you bet your ass they ran outside. After a week, the teachers stopped enforcing it and everyone stopped caring. Edit. Can't believe you people believe such an obvious lie, mayo. Overtime is paid in free time instead of money. 3 people quit so far. More people planning to. No new hires to be found. It's probably just a matter of time before this shop closes down. My high school had a really bad problem with students showing up to class 5 minutes late every day. So they tried 3 different solutions. First, they stopped letting us use lockers. They quickly found out that just meant that nobody brought their books to class. Next, they decided to ban use of the restrooms between class periods. Teachers started complaining about everyone asking for a bathroom pass as soon as class started, so that was abandoned after a week or so. Lastly, one week they made a ton of announcements Monday, Wednesday that all students were to be on time for class. Then on Thursday they suspended any student who was late for insubordination. Turns out that included half the football team. This occurred right before the biggest game of the year. In a town of 4,000 people, this game attracts 16,000. So yeah, they gave that up as well. We implemented the buddy bench for lonely people to sit on and make friends. It was pretty damn expensive and nicely decorated. Someone stole it. My high school made students wear these neon t-shirts that read "dress code violator" if their outfit didn't adhere to the school's policy. They became so popular the school began selling them 1 week later. My 4 years of high school were full of my school trying out new policies and procedures to use in the future. My sophomore year, my school decided to make tests count for 100% of the grade, and homework count for 0%, but it was still assigned. And as you'd expect, kids did absolutely no homework. The ones that didn't retain information well, or were bad test takers, struggled pretty hard to make the grade without homework padding it. Our failure rate was pretty high that year. Then my junior year, they brought homework grades back and made a new rule that there were no due dates, nor penalties for turning in late work for your 6 weeks. We didn't do quarters. As long as it was before the next 6 weeks started, you were good. This led to students doing no homework until the last few days of the 6 weeks, and teachers had to accept and grade them all before grades were due. This put teachers under immense stress by causing them to work insane hours and spend every hour at home grading, which made them very irritable and more likely to just shove pointless activities and busy work at us until they could finish grading. My junior high school adopted a policy to not allow kids to loiter in groups of 5 or more, in attempts to crack down on gang mentality. This was freaking junior high. Anyway, me and my group of misfits, 6 of us, were always hanging out during free times, and the principal eventually stopped us and asked us to separate. I had to casually explain to him that we were not a group of 6, but 2 groups of 3 that were intermingling. People caught wind and that rule was basically dead. That was one of the few times I had to explain to my father why he was called into the principal's office with me. I used to work for a production company that employed a lot of really skilled, award-winning editors. There were producers and executives and directors, but the real money makers, the people who really made the company, were the editors. So the company was basically centered around them. The executives would always order in food for the editors, and the editors would usually eat in their offices while doing their thing. One day the executives decided to cut paid lunches to save money. The editors all thought this was a D move, so they'd go out for lunch and sometimes stay out for like 3 hours. There was nothing the company could do, really, because these editors were top of their game, and if Warner Bros. heard that the editor they always used had left, they might leave too. So the company couldn't do anything. They saved maybe $15 per person per day, but lost like 4 hours per person per day. Oh grave a circumflex a diaresis. Little backstory. My high school was a teeny tiny rural school. 600 kids in grades 7-12. Randomly at the beginning of second semester my senior year, the new principal, who had just moved here from an inner city school in another state, decided that we would no longer be allowed to carry backpacks, book bags in the halls between classes for safety reasons. Makes sense in this day and age. But the students were pissed about this abrupt change in clockwork of our tiny school. Shenanigans ensued after this new rule came into effect, including every student dropping their books in the hall simultaneously at 10:51 day. My personal favorite was the guy in my class who decided he would make something that couldn't be called a backpack. First he took a bunch of belts and tied his books together so they could be carried on his back. That was shut down after day 2. That's when it got hilarious. The next Monday he comes waltzing in wearing a product of his own design. He had made L-shaped shelves from pieces of wood that could be connected to the sides of his legs, and proceeded to harness his books to these leg brace shelves. Needless to say, he was pulled from class before lunch. High school took all the stall doors off the boys' bathrooms because of graffiti or something, so I started pooping in the bathroom near the office. After a couple of times of the superintendent coming in while I was doing that, all the doors were put back on. I've told this story before, but my high school tried to crack down on people wearing their ties too short, as was the fashion. It got to the stage where anything except completely pristine uniforms would get you a detention, which, coming up to exam season, was one more thing we didn't want to deal with. In protest at what was widely seen as a ridiculous rule, ties started getting longer and longer, 1 foot, 2 feet, 2.5 feet, as long as people could get them. It culminated in one girl sewing 2 ties together into a 5-foot beast that trailed on the floor as she walked, and resulted in the deputy head having a screaming fit one day about how disrespectful we all were to the uniform codes. After that, the teachers quietly gave up on the new hardline approach to uniforms, and everything went back to normal. Not sure if it was exactly a rule, but my middle school once encouraged kids to not touch each other at all to reduce physical harassment cases. Even friendly gestures among friends. All that did was get the kids running around touching each other around campus for about a month and a half, screaming physical harassment. As they did so, to add insult to injury, they did it twice as often in front of the admin who made the presentation about it. My high school attempted to ban trip pants and the like. However, due to a hilariously overlooked typo, the student handbook that got sent to students and parents just said students may not wear pants. We had a good laugh and it made the local news. Unfortunately, this does show the quality of high school I went to. Wasn't ready for college, haha. This was actually in the news a couple of months ago. We had a really hot summer last year, and the boys at my little brother's secondary school were mad that they couldn't wear shorts but the girls could wear skirts. The junior leadership team brought it up at a meeting, and the head teacher jokingly went, "Alright, if the boys want to wear skirts, then let them." A group of boys went to school wearing skirts the next day. Then it wasn't just a group of them. My school tried to enforce a no standing still or sitting policy at recess, because if we weren't moving, we were surely spreading gossip. Edit. Realized I didn't really say how it backfired. A lot of the kids thought this rule was because there was some big scandal the teachers were trying to prevent from getting out, which only generated crazy new rumors, mostly about the teachers. If you return a library book late, your parents would have to return it and explain why it's late. It worked about as well as you would think. The rule lasted a few months before they figured it wasn't worth the cost of replacing all the books. My dad was a corpsman with the Marines doing high desert training in the Mojave. They had a big problem with unidentified snake bites. i.e. people would get bit but not identify the snake. So it was hard to find the right antidote. So my dad got all the Marines in a room and said, if you get bit by a snake, bring it back here so we can identify it. Not even a full week later they had to alter the wording a bit, because a Marine was bit by a rattlesnake and decided to bring it back without killing it. This man had carried this snake all the way back to base alive, and the snake decided to let him know exactly how he felt about that by repeatedly biting his arm the entire time. Needless to say, that Marine went home. They made sure to hold another meeting where they told everyone to kill the snake, then bring it back. Edit. He kept the arm. They got him to base hospital in roughly 50 minutes and gave him anti-venom. He was out for 6 weeks. This was in 1995 at 29 palms. He calls it 29 stumps. 4th Marine Division, i.e. reservist Marines out of Buffalo, New York. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So, her first week here she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area for tables and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people, elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally. The next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. We found out our Catholic elementary school wasn't allowed to stop any sort of religious behavior regardless if it's a Catholic school. Lots of Hail Satanists and uncomfortable teachers ensued. I told this story before, but in high school they banned backpacks in classrooms. Everyone was pissed. Some girls started bringing bigger purses to put their books in. So a bunch of dudes brought their mom's purses in and were using those for school books. Administration and teachers got upset because we found a loophole, so they banned purses too. At which point a bunch of moms got upset because their daughters had to carry around tampons and stuff in their coat pockets, in addition to all of their books, notebooks, calculators, pens, pencils, and whatever else they have in those purses. Finally the school let everyone have their backpacks back. Edit. Knowing that other places banned backpacks makes me feel a bit better. What would make me feel a lot better is going back in time and telling MRS Gaines that she can eat a bag of decomposing dongs for suggesting that we get rid of our backpacks. That lady hated teaching. And she hated students. She just loved control. Already having an authority problem. I bucked up at her more than once. I remember one story where me and a bunch of other seniors started compli-salting each other. We'd pay each other compliments, but in an insulting tone. Start to act like we were going to fight, then hug it out. We thought it was hilarious. But MRS Gaines thought we were being disrespectful to her authority because we'd compli-salt each other a bunch outside of her door. Once we learned this annoyed her, we started to do it more until some pink slips started coming out and people were getting sent to the office for complimenting each other in a loud tone. What a joke of a teacher. Our school has this day where you can wear pajamas to school but have to pay $1 to do it. Everyone started wearing pajamas to class anyway, saying it's what they normally wear and didn't pay. The school got rid of PJ Day. Edit. Typo. No short skirts rule at my high school resulted in a sharp increase of yoga pants. All the guys at my school saw this as a net gain and did a good job of not advertising our collective appreciation, for fear of ruining a good thing. Friendship station for people to find someone to play with in primary school. Turned out as you'd expect. A place to bully people on their own. Removed quickly. Edit. Well, this story blew up. My college didn't allow younger years to leave the grounds and go to the shops during lunch. They just asked the older years to buy stuff for them. The college banned energy drinks. A black market sprung up, with the older years being dealers. Edit. UK college. So 6th form. We had years 10-13. So ages 16-19. In the UK, college is like high school. I worked for a software company that routed all sales less than $100K to inside sales, while larger orders went to the outside sales teams that worked directly with the customers. until one of the inside sales guys convinced the customer that they didn't need the $2 million software and only needed a $99k upgrade. Not school, but work. My work just recently tried to implement a new attendance policy that didn't last 24 hours. They changed it so that after 2 unexcused absences in a year you were fired. An unexcused absence is any absence or tardiness. I think you were allowed 4 tardies when you didn't give your boss more than 24 hours notice. No more smoking at the front gate during recess and lunch. Then the smokers started leaving at recess and didn't come back the rest of the day. When smartphones were starting to become popular, my school had a zero tolerance for phones policy. Having your phone out resulted in an immediate suspension. My phone went off in class my freshman year and I got suspended for that. Keep in mind I was that kid that JAD a 4.0. Never broke any rules. Never even got a detention. And that was the thing that got me suspended. The school eventually removed the policy because more kids were getting suspended and I'm sure that made the school look bad. At my college, my dorm used to have this thing called Mold Mondays. Someone would go around knocking on doors at around 8 or 9 p.m. asking if you wanted to order a 40 ounce. Then they would go on a run to the liquor store and buy them for people that ordered them. We would then all hang out outside drinking 40s and listening to music until security came and told us to take it inside. It was a fun tradition we had. But the dean hated it. He decided to fund his own Mold Mondays. But instead of malt liquor he wanted to draw people in with free chocolate malts. What ended up happening is people who did the regular Mold Mondays and wanted a chocolate malt would just go to that one first, get a free treat and then leave to go and drink 40s. The school was so hopelessly obsessed with league table standings that any kids getting A grades were untouchable. They made the school look good, so they could treat who they liked how they liked. Bullying skyrocketed, the school's reputation plummeted, attendance dropped, and their precious league table results followed. They put winning points ahead of the duty of care to the children. Cunts. My old job had a draconian attendance policy in which if you were at a second late, you got a 1/2-point demerit. If you were an hour late, you got that same 1/2-point demerit. Demerits accrued. 3 equals verbal warning. 4 equals written. Either 5 or 6 was termination. In addition to making for some anxiety-filled employees that made dumb decisions to speed through snowstorms. It also meant if you got stuck in a traffic jam, you might as well just take your time. Stop for gas. Get breakfast, etc. Same place also had a similar policy that assured the plague spread through the whole place. Say you came to work at 7. By 9 AM you've got a fever and full-blown flu symptoms. If you clock out then, you get a whole point demerit. But if you sit there coughing and shivering and infecting your co-workers for another 2 hours, till your shift was half over, you only got a half-point demerit. The school had assigned parking spaces and if you didn't get your tag for your car, and which space was yours, at the beginning of the year during registration, it was a nightmare to get. If I didn't get to school 45 minutes before classes started, my parking spot was always taken. I think overall between grade 11 and 12, I got to park in my designated space maybe 9 times. Complaints were made and notices were sent in the school paper, but all they ever did was give a slap on the wrist as it continued. At a former job, software development, there was a football table. People would play reasonably often, but just one game to take a break. One day, management came down to the software engineering floor and saw people playing football in the middle of the afternoon. They declared no football until 4:30 PM. That ended up making it so that everybody knew when there would be other people wanting to play football. So it was much easier to find somebody willing to play and significantly increased the amount of football played at work. They tried to ban the Bible. Within 3 days even the atheists, the Buddhists, and the Muslims were reading it. They also got a lawsuit.